Right, let me just do a screen share. Are you guys seeing my screen? Because I don't know how to see what you guys are seeing.
Yeah, we can see.
Oh. Okay. So today's talk is on something called Vivek, and Vivek is I'll go into it through some Sakya so that you guys have a better understanding of what it is. But it's one of my favorite concepts in terms of how enlightenment is achieved. So I'm going to go through some options, life options. I know it sounds like such an existential thing. Then we'll talk a little bit about Vivek and how to strengthen Vivek Buddhi, some personal actions, and we'll see if we get to the end of the content today. So I want you guys all to contemplate how your life used to be when you were young, when you were 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way up to 10 years old. Do you remember just being so alive? There wasn't really the stress of going to school, working, making money, getting into the world. A child is just so alive. They don't need any type of stimulation. A little child, they can go outside, they look at a little flower, and then they'll be interested in that flower for so long. They'll go and play in the mud. They'll go and play on the beach. Every single thing for them is so alive and on. But really, after the age of 10, something starts to switch off. And by the time you're 14, 15, and definitely by the time you're 18, something that was really, really alive when you were young has totally shut off. The image I'm showing you, as you can see on the left side, the little girl in the yellow dress, so alive. As we grow older, we start to look more like the center image. Very sedentary, don't really want to do much, we don't like moving very much, we're constantly thinking inside of our head all the time, or we're trying to look for distractions. And by the time you reach the age of 30, you really have died mentally and emotionally, even though you might be living. So children, while they're living, they're still alive. But by the time you reach age 30, you're living, but you're not really alive anymore. And by the time, you may not have physically died, but a lot of the energy that you brought as a human being into the world has really left. It's gone. And then eventually, you're on your deathbed and then you have to leave the world. But something has fundamentally died. Started off really energetic and then slowly weaned off. And with God's grace, I get to spend a lot of time with saints who have a lot of kamai and have lived their life in a completely different way than the rest of the world. And they say this very often. They say enlightenment or Brahmgyan or Darshana Vaheguru requires an intense amount of energy. And if somebody has lost that aliveness and that energy, it becomes very difficult for them to sort of be successful on the spiritual pathway. They might be successful at rote things, for example, reading Bani, doing Nam Japana, but they're not really involved in it. It's not alive for them. They're doing it as a formality. But somebody who is alive and young, they have much more success with all of the spiritual endeavors they take on. Reading Bani has a different outcome for them. Simran and other meditation practices have a really different outcome for somebody who is alive and energetic. And So the saints actually say the best age that can guarantee you a higher chance at getting enlightenment within this lifetime is usually before the age of 30, because they're really honing into the fact that somebody has not lost that aliveness. Because as you grow older and you go into the workforce and you go into relationships, a person really starts to die and everything becomes just about making it through the day, just about living. But that life, that aliveness is now gone. And that aliveness is very important in the spiritual process. So I know that a lot of the listeners that are listening to this, you guys are young, and I know that it seems like, I've got a lot of time on my hands to be able to work on the spiritual side of my life, but the truth is, the age that you're in right now is your most prime and your best time to pursue a spiritual process. As you get older, as you finish off school, college, university, you go into the workforce and you go into having a relationship and having a family, that aliveness is going to decrease. And with that decreases your chances at being able to get enlightened. Now, this is how the vast majority of the world lives. This is 99.99% of human beings live their life like this. Very alive at the beginning, and sometimes somewhere near their 30s, they dwindle out, and then they just live for the sake of living. But there's a very small minority of beings that have been on this planet that have lived their life completely differently. And even in the most difficult and in the most strife, they seem to be very, very alive, very, very present, very, very on. If you look at Guru Nanak Dev Ji's life, very, very present, very on, very high energy, no matter what they did. Whether it was as a child living with their parents, whether it was in the workforce, when they had to take care of the farm, when they were given, let's say, a convenience store, in best English translation I could come up with, a small goods and convenience store, whether it was getting married, whether it was having children, or whether it was after that, going on the 4 Udasiyam that they went on later in their life. They were very alive, very on, all the time. It didn't seem like the world's worries, the world's distresses were really getting to them. Very on and alive. And, if you read Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Vani, always singing, always dancing, always in Anand. And this is true of pretty much anybody who has attained enlightenment. On the left side, you can see, top left is a picture of Guru Gobind Singh Ji when they were young. And as a young child, they were the ones that told Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji that they should go ahead and give Shahidi for the Kashmiri Pandits. For a small child to have that much vivek and to be that alive is unheard of at that age. And on the bottom left panel, you see a picture of Mirabai, who is one of the most, in my opinion, most inspiring Bhagats I've come across, because one, she's a female, and two, she was the prime disciple of Bhagat Ravidas Ji, and her Isht was Krishna. And she was a Rajput princess, someone who had absolutely everything. Yet still, she left all of that. She got so much slander. Her character, people called her characterless because she used to go to a Chamar Guru, which was Bhagat Ravidas Ji for her. People called her characterless because she didn't want to get married or engage with her husband in a Grihasti Jivan, because her Isht Krishna Ji, she had already given up everything for him. And because of that, her family members, actually her in-laws, they tortured her so much. They would tie her to a camel, and then in Rajasthan, where she was from, it's basically all desert. And they would tie her to the camel, and the camel would run with her entire body being scratched by the sand. And beyond that, her brother-in-law tried to kill her with a snake, with a poison. At different instances, she faced a lot. But despite that, she was so alive. Always singing, always dancing, always remembering Vaheguru, always And she never gave up doing seva of her Guru Bhagat Ravidas Ji just because people had told her, why do you go to some chamad who sits on top of a mountain? Why are you feeding him? Why are you washing his clothes? What's wrong with you? Her being a woman at the time in India where, we think we're progressive, but we still see a lot of, inequality between men and women. But she's doing this in a time where women were considered like the dirt on the ground. They were considered the lowest aspect of humanity, but still she's so alive. On the right side, you see another Mahapurush. His name was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His entire life, he only just Nam Japana and singing and dancing and then crying. Alive, just so alive. And then there's a picture of the Sufi saints on the right side. And if you read the poetry of Bulle Shah or Bhagat Farid Ji or Shah Hussain, these people, or Rumi or some Tabriz, these people are so alive, even though they're facing so much strife. But in our lives, we actually live quite a life of luxury if you think about it. We've got access to a home, we've got access to food, we've got access to an education, we've got access to a developed country that we're living in. We're kind of living as kings and queens, but we're still so depressed. We're still we don't have that life within us. And these beings, having gone through so much difficulties, are still very, very alive. So where does that come from? So Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj says, "Dhyan dhyan tu Prabhu mil, Nanak utri chint." The second part of that screen. Or Ai Panthi Saga Jamati Man Jita Jag Jeet. And I've highlighted the word man there because the entire universe, your entire cosmos, is within your mind. How do I mean? When you're awake, obviously, you see that you're interacting with this cosmos. You can touch your phone, you can touch your laptop, you can touch your table, you can talk to people. And then you close your eyes at nighttime, you go into a dream state. Anything that you can possibly imagine is up for game there. Anything that's imaginable, anything from your past life, anything that's happening in the dream state, all of the impossible things of the awakening states can happen there. So you've encompassed all of the cosmos in the awakening state, and then you've encompassed all of the imaginary and possible states of the cosmos in your dreaming state. But what happens when you go into deep sleep? Everything is gone. In deep sleep, your mind is shut off. So your mind is still on when you're awake and when you're dreaming. But when you go into a deep, deep sleep where there's no more dreams anymore, your mind is essentially off. And when your mind shuts off, the entire cosmos and the entire imaginable cosmos is completely gone. Because when you're in a deep sleep, you know that you're a human, you know that you're a man or a woman. Do you even know that you're a Sikh, or you're a Hindu, or you're a Muslim? Do you know your age? Do you know that you're old or young? None of that you know in deep sleep. And you know nothing else about the world in deep sleep, which means as soon as the mind shuts off, the entire cosmos, the entire imaginable cosmos completely shuts off as well. This also means that the source of all of your pain, all of your worries, and all of your distress is coming from mind, because it is the gateway to the entire cosmos. If you can slip right behind the mind and establish an identity behind the mind, you would reach the states that these previous beings that I've just shown you have reached. Something beyond the mind. You want to win the entire world? Win the mind first. How do you win the mind? How do you slip behind the mind? Dhyan. Or the best word to describe it in translation into English would be meditation or simran. Without dhyan, you can't slip behind the mind. Right now, the way we live is that the mind is the master and we become the slave. But for these enlightened beings, they're the masters and their mind is the slave, meaning that they have control, full control of the mind. Right now what happens is when we wake up in the morning, we start to read Japji Sahib Ji. By the time, I still have to go to school, I gotta pack my lunch, I still have a lot of these other things I have to do. Oh, this person, he didn't even reply to my message, or she didn't even reply to my message. Oh, just you wait, I'm not gonna reply back to her message either. All of these things start to come into our head. And then it's the very end, you're reading Salok, body, and you're like, it's done, it's finished. I didn't even realize. Which means that your mind was the master this entire time, and you were the slave. But for people that go into higher states of meditation and who have Vivek, those people are very present, very alive, and are capable of directing their mind as they wish. So, a lot of times, our parents or our friends, the religious community always is telling us, tu naam japya kar, tu bani padhya kar, je tu nahi karya, tum sukh nahi milna, tu Vaheguru nu yaad karya kar, all of that. And sometimes, I talk to a lot of teenagers and they say, I just don't want to do that. I just don't feel like it. Like, why would I want to do something like that? And that's a valid point. Because sometimes when you push something on somebody, it kind of decreases its value. But I have to present you an option here. People refer to Vaheguru and they say Vaheguru the Naam Japya Kar and all that stuff. And we tend to think of Vaheguru as some entity maybe sitting on a throne somewhere, some astral world called Sachkhand, that's where Vaheguru is, and I have to meditate a lot in order to go and meet them, and so forth and so forth. But actually, that's not the type of Vaheguru that Gurbani talks about at all. In fact, whenever Gurbani talks about Vaheguru, they talk about a state or an entity whose roop is Anand. Not that Vaheguru gives you Anand. Vaheguru is Anand Sarup. So one of the Panktiyan that you read in Jap Sahib, Sada Satchidanand Sarabang Pranasi. So the word Satchidanand encompasses the word Ananda Sarup. Because Vaheguru is Ananda Sarup. Let's say someone didn't know what Anand meant. A different way to describe Anand would be a state of being where there is absolutely no pain, no dukh, no stress, no worries, none of that. And there's a lot of Gurbani Panktiyan that talk about all of your dukh are going to be taken away. Every type of dukh is going to be destroyed. So actually, the real question should be, if you're not working towards getting to a state where all of your worries are gone, then what's your other option? If it's not meditation or a spiritual process, if you don't want to follow that process, then what's your other option? The other option is the 99 way that the 99 percentile of the world is living. Or as a small child, they're so alive, and by the time they're 30, they're just eating food for the sake of living. Whatever was alive inside of them is gone. They've been pandered by different types of anxieties and worries, and if you think that that's not going to happen to you, just think about it. You, as being this young, having absolutely all the luxuries that you can possibly want, as compared to the rest of the 90% of the world, think about how you feel right now. Are you happy? Are you fully satisfied with life? So then can you imagine when you become 30 or 40, if you're going to get happier or more satisfied? And if you need more proof, go to your parents and ask them, hey mom, hey dad, can you tell me with honesty, are you fully satisfied with life? Are you happy? Did you achieve the joy that you set out to achieve when you were young? Or go ask one of your friends, or go ask someone who's really, really rich. Hey, can you honestly tell me, are you satisfied? Are you happy? And that rich person will say, no, I'm not satisfied because I only have $10 million of net worth. I want to make it to $50 million of net worth, and only when I get to $50 million of net worth will I be happy. Then you go ahead and ask the person who has a $50 million net worth, hey, are you happy and satisfied? And he says, no, I want to make it to the $100 million club. And until I make it there, I'm not going to be happy. And then you go ask the $100 million club dude, and he says, no, I want to be a part of the billionaires club. And it never ends. So if it's not a spiritual process that is guaranteeing the end being a state that is completely void of pain, of distress, of anxiety, of depression, and is completely an all-encompassing bliss and an ecstasy and an exuberance. If not that pathway, then what? And you're left with what everybody else is living like. So this is a better way to go about thinking, why am I even bothering to follow a spiritual process? It's not because somebody is pushing me, no, it's because the other option that I have is garbage. It's absolutely terrible, because in that option, nobody has found peace. Everybody's living, but they're not alive. That's why we follow a spiritual process, so that we can get to a place where we are exuberant and alive and filled with ecstasy at every moment of our being. So then you have to choose. I've given you the options. You have to make a choice. This choice, or making this choice, is what we call vivek, or discernment. Har pareo swami ka dware dije buddh viveka rahav. This pankti is not coming from somebody who's a first-time meditator. It's not coming from someone who just took Amrit. It's not coming from somebody who just started to read Gurbani. This is a pankti that is coming from someone who has done everything possible in the meditative process. Who has done so much Nam Japana, who has read so much Bani, who has done so much Dhyan, who has read a lot of Brahma Vidya. They're saying, Har pareo swami ka dwara dija buddh viveka. I'm collapsing. I'm exhausted because I've done everything. There are other panktiyan as well. How kar kar thakao pav baho tere, nanak garib rakho har mere. I'm tired. I've tried everything. And even then, they're asking for one more thing. What is it? Dija buddh viveka. Give me that discerning intellect, that vivek buddhi, to really understand what is real amongst all of this illusion. So I can choose the absolute right thing. And one of the keys, I know that, I don't know how many of you guys are practicing Amritaris and how many of you are not, or how many of this is really new to you, but it doesn't really matter where you are. What I really recommend is, if you do a formal ardas, to ask for this in your formal ardas. Har pareo swami ka dware dija buddh viveka. And don't make any assumptions about what vivek is going to be. Just ask. And if you're not somebody who knows how to do a formal ardas, or has never done an ardas before, just look up to the universe, or look within yourself and ask, please guide me to what is actually real, to what is actually joy, what is actually ultimate peace and ultimate emancipation, the final freedom. Guide me to what that is. So I'm going to share two sakhya with you guys to kind of really hammer in what vivek actually means. You all know the story, or you might have heard of Baba Buddha Ji. When Baba Buddha Ji first met Guru Nanak Dev Ji, they were actually very young. So they were around 8 years old, and their name wasn't Buddha at that point. Basically what they were doing one day was, in India, when they make prasada, they have a little setup where they burn firewood, and then on top of that they'll put like a metal plate, and then they'll make the prasada on top of that. So that's their mini stove. And you can, because the stove is open, you can see the wood burning. And Baba Buddha Ji, when he was young, he's looking at the stove burning, and he sees something very peculiar. There's really big logs of wood, and then there's little twigs. And what he sees is the big logs of wood, they're not burning as quickly as the little twigs. He's looking and he's seeing the little twigs are burning up faster than the big logs. And he's crying while he's saying this. Why? Because all he can think about is, what if I burn up faster than my mother, than my father, and all of the seniors that I know in my life? What if I burn up faster than them? Because if a twig can burn up faster than the big pieces of log, then what's to say that I might end up dying first, and then my mother and father will die? As he contemplates this, a few other instances happen to him as well, where he's contemplating this type of thing, and he sees an old man that comes underneath a tree. I hate to say man, but I mean that's what they look like. And he sees that a few saints come and surround him every day. Maybe he knows a way out of this. Maybe I can share this grief with him and he'll let me know how to get out of it. So he brings a cup of milk, a bowl of milk, and he goes to this saint who's sitting under the tree, and he says, I give you this bowl of milk. Can you help me through a problem that I'm having? And he asks this. He said, I was watching the stove burning, and I saw that the little twigs were burning faster than the bigger pieces of wood. What if I end up dying before my family members? What's the mystery of death? What was the point of life? Where am I going to go after death? And the saint that was sitting underneath the tree, that was Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj. Guru Nanak Dev Ji smiles looking at Baba Buddha Ji, and he says, how old are you? And he replies with his age. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, you don't talk like a child. You talk like a Buddha, an old person, someone who's wise. And from that point on, he was known as Baba Buddha Ji. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was so happy to have met such a disciple, because even more happy, the best thing for a guru is when they finally meet a jigyasu or a Sikh who has vivek buddhi in them, a discerning intellect. Because how many children do you know of actually contemplate, oh, I might end up dying before my parents. I want to know the mystery of death. I want to know what happens. I want to know what the point of life is. That's not very common. So the fact that this happened to them made Guru Nanak Dev Ji so happy, and they took him on as a disciple, and Baba Buddha Ji ended up staying all the way. They did get enlightened underneath Guru Nanak Dev Ji's care, but they ended up staying until Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji as well. And they became one of the most prominent Sikhs that we know. Another story that this is one of my favorite, one of my all-time favorite Sakhiyan to really hit home Vivek, because this was a Sakhi that hit home Vivek for me as well. And this is when I decided to really change up my life and pursue this process more seriously. And this is the Sakhi of Buddha, or Siddhartha Gautam, which is the founder of the Buddhist religion. So Siddhartha grew up in a very luxury world. When he was young, and when he was just born, a saint had come to his father, whose name was Siddhodhan, and had told his father that either your son is going to be one of the greatest kings that the earth has ever seen, or your son is going to end up being a fakir. He's going to leave the world, he's going to become a sadhu. Now, what parent wants their child to become a sadhu? It's only nice when other people's children, when other people become sadhus. But if you become a sadhu, your parents are not going to be good for it. They're not going to want that for you. As funny and nice, as ironic as it is. Anyway, so Siddhodhan thinks there's no way I want my child to become a fakir or a sadhu. I want him to be one of the greatest kings on earth. And I want him to take my kingdomship forward. So what he does is, the saint warns him that even a small amount of vairag, just a small amount of detachment will tick him off and he'll become a fakir. You need to be careful. What Siddhodhan does at that point is, he bans all saints, all religious people from ever coming into his palace, and into a small city that he had made. He bans anybody who has white hair. He bans anybody who has wrinkles on their face. He bans anyone who has any type of disease or sickness. And he has workers there who must go and pick out anything that is dead from their garden and their trees and their entire city vicinity. All petals that have fallen off must be replaced. Flowers must always look new. The leaves on trees must always look new. Everything must be alive all the time. And this is how the Buddha lived, or Siddhartha lived, until the age of 29. So at this point he had gotten married and he had one young son, infant son. And all he had ever seen in his life was a life of complete luxury. There were dancers in there. There were singers and dancers. There were fountains. There was jewels. Everything was alive and beautiful all the time. And by the time he was 29, he's married. He has a child. His father thinks, well, there's no way he's becoming a sadhu now because, I mean, he's 29. And he started his own family. And he really likes, he looks like a king. He acts like a king. He's ready. He sends Siddhartha finally outside of his little palace and city grounds to inaugurate some ball that the princes were held. Basically, all the princes of the area had gotten together, and Siddhartha was invited to do an inauguration outside of the city places. And his charioteer, his Sarathi, was also told, under strict guidance, that you cannot tell Siddhartha about any of the truths of life, about aging, disease, illness, all of that stuff, because he is not to know it. But obviously, outside of the city grounds, everything is the way it's supposed to be. And what happens is, as they're riding, Siddhartha sees 4 things as he's on his chariot. The first thing he sees is an old man. And Siddhartha asks his charioteer to stop the chariot, and asks him, what is that? And the Sarathi, he's kind of scared because he's not supposed to say anything to Siddhartha. But then Siddhartha commands him as the prince of the kingdom, I command you to tell me what that is. And he says, that's an old man, and he's got wrinkles and he's got white hair. And Siddhartha says, does that happen to everybody? And the Sarathi says, yes, everybody ages, everybody gets old. Siddhartha says, so then I will age and I will get old. The Sarathi says, yes, Gautama, you will. Siddhartha's entire face changes. It's very serene and calm, but now it's serious and contemplative. He goes back onto his chariot and he continues on. But there is contemplation, a very deep contemplation setting in now. The second sight he sees is a person that had a disease. Some say it was leprosy, some say it was another disease, but something that was very visibly wrong with their body. And he asks his charioteer to stop and explain, what is that? I've never seen something like that on someone's skin. And the Sarathi explains, that's somebody who has leprosy. That's a disease of the skin. And Siddhartha says, does that happen to everybody? And the Sarathi says, different diseases come to different people, but almost every single person has some kind of disease. So I will get a disease as well. That's what Siddhartha says. The Sarathi says, yes, it happens to everyone. Continues on. The third thing he sees is somebody who is dead. So in India, when someone dies, they have the dead body and they're picking it up and they're saying Ram Naam Satya Hai, Ram Naam Satya Hai, or in the Sikh Sampradaya we say Sat Naam Vaheguru, Sat Naam Vaheguru, as we're taking the dead body. And he sees this congregation moving by with the dead body, and he asks his Sarathi, what is that? The Sarathi says, that's somebody who has died. Siddhartha says, what does that mean? We don't live here forever? And the Sarathi says, no, people die and they move on. And suddenly it hits Siddhartha, if everybody dies, then what the heck is the point of life? Siddhartha contemplates, then I will die as well. Sarathi says, yes, eventually you will. The fourth sight he sees is a saint who's sitting underneath a tree and he's meditating. Siddhartha says, what is that? And the Sarathi explains that's a saint who's meditating as a means to understand the very basis of life and to get freed from the trap of death. Siddhartha says, so then there's a way out. See, as soon as he saw the dead body, he was overtaken by the sense of grief that there's no point to life. What's the point of living when every single thing just dies at the end? And when he sees the saint, and the Sarathi explains that he's trying to, go beyond life and death, then Siddhartha says, you mean there's a way out? Sarathi says, yes, they say that there's a way out as well. Gautama tells his Sarathi, turn the chariot around. And the Sarathi says, please, we have to get to the inauguration. You can't tell the king that I've been telling you all of this stuff. I'm going to get killed for saying all of these things. But still, Siddhartha says, turn the chariot around. And he turns the chariot around, returns to his kingdom. And every single thing that once used to have color is completely just colorless. There are singers, there are dancers, but none of that is swaying Siddhartha. And he waits till nightfall comes, and he sees that every single thing is gone. He takes one piece of clothing, and he takes a bowl, that he can drink water out of it. And he's about to leave. And he thinks in his head, I just had a small child. At least I should go see the child. He's about to open the door to go see his small son. He stops. And he contemplates, even this will one day die. Then was it really mine to begin with? He leaves without seeing his son. And he goes out of the palace grounds and he becomes one of the greatest enlightened beings who led an entire bunch with their philosophy, how to get out of, and the way he did that, just in one moment, he made a decision. It wasn't, calculated decisions. Oh, I still have to go inaugurate this ball. I still have to. Oh, is it back? Okay. Okay, perfect. So, what's about that? It's not a calculated decision for him. Really listen to this carefully. Siddhartha is not calculating. He's not saying, no, I still have it. I just had a small child. I just got married. And what's my father going to say? I still have to take care of the kingdom. At least let me go to this prince's inauguration. At least I'll do that. Then I'll leave the world. Then I'll contemplate. No. It was a split-second decision. Done. If we all end up dying in this world, there has to be a way out of death. That is the point of life. I have to find it. Otherwise, there is no goal for me in life. A split-second decision, and he goes by that decision. And let me tell you one thing. Anybody who has ever had the experience of Vaheguru, who has ever been enlightened, has always come to this point, where they have made a split-second decision that I have to pursue the reality of this life. Otherwise, everything I've done here has been for nothing. Beet jahe janama akajre. Otherwise, my life will go by, and it will have meant nothing whatsoever. This type of discernment, this split second, and think about what he had to lose. He had the greatest luxuries in life. Everything was set, newly married, just had a child. He gave up a lot. In respect to what Gautama gave up, what exactly do we have to give up? We don't have that much that we have to give up. But he completely split-second decision and goes on. And Gurmukh Parampara, we call it Tivar Vairag, or a very potent detachment. In the Buddhist philosophy, they call it Samveg. And I found this, I absolutely love what's being written here. So listen to this carefully. Samveg is a Buddhist term which indicates a sense of shock, dismay, and spiritual urgency to reach liberation and escape the suffering of samsara. According to one of their bhikshus, Samveg is the first emotion you're supposed to bring to training. The very start of the spiritual process, the actual spiritual process, one that is concerned with direct enlightenment, doesn't even start until you have that moment of Vairag and that moment of Vivek and followed by Vairag. And look at the second paragraph. This still hits me even to this day. The oppressive senses of shock, dismay, alienation that come with realizing the futility and meaninglessness of life as it's normally lived, a chastening sense of our own complacency and foolishness in having let ourselves live so blindly, and an anxious sense of urgency in trying to find a way out of the meaningless cycle. If you have never been hit with the sense of shock that the life is actually meaningless the way I've been living it, actually that means that the spiritual process hasn't started. And I'll even say this, if this has happened to you, then your spiritual process has started, regardless of whether you've taken Amrit or not. People tend to think that once you take Amrit, your spiritual process starts. And I see a lot of people living their life just without that sense of urgency, without that sense of shock that I need to find a way out of this cycle. I need to do something about my enlightenment. And almost sometimes I see that once you take Amrit, people become even more just more lazy because they think that they've done everything. No. Until you have been hit with the sense of shock, dismay, alienation, foolishness, and having lived so blindly, until this shock comes to you, followed by the urgency to do something about it, actually the spiritual process has not started. So this is something that you should contemplate in your own life to see, have I actually done this? Because it is very direct in Gurbani. Pehla maran kabul, jeevan ki chhad aas, oh sabna ki ren ka, to aao hamare paas. Before going to the Guru is saying, before you come to me, give up any hope of this life. Pehla maran kabul, accept death and forget about living the way you have been living so far. Become so humble, the dust of the feet of all, then come to me. And you must ask, did this get fulfilled in my life? Did this happen to me? Did I accept death first? And even just standing in front of the Panch Pyare and say, yes, I'm willing to give my head for the Guru is not enough. Ravan gave his head 11 times. He actually cut his head and gave it 11 times in different times. But not one of them did he actually give his mind properly. I think it was Ramchandra who just said, Ravan, you've given your head 11 times. If one time you had actually given me your mind, you wouldn't have had to cut them off so many times. Not just merely by saying that I've given my head to the Guru is enough. This has to happen to you. Pehla maran kabul. Until that sense of shock has laid into your system, somewhere in your system where you're utterly shocked by the meaninglessness of life and an urgency to do something about it, the spiritual process is still dull. It requires some kind of life. But do you understand that this type of shock and urgency can only come to somebody who is alive? Somebody who's already just living for the sake of living, they're not going to come to this sense of urgency and shock. Only somebody who is alive and full of energy has enough vivek and energy to actually have this sense of shock. Which is why I'm encouraging all of you, the ages that you're at, where you're at, this is prime time. And it's only going to get worse amount of life that you can inject into the process of spirituality, into the process of enlightenment, is going to get lower as your life goes on. This is the time to really contemplate Vivek. So I'm actually going to I'm going to give you some exercises that will strengthen your Vivek and your discerning intellect so that we can come across this sense of urgency as well. And always remember this. Pehla maran kabul, jeevan ki chhad aas, ho wo sabna ki reen ka tao aao hamare paas. This is from the Pali Canon, which is also from the Buddhist canon, 5 daily remembrances that they have. And I was so shocked when I read this because, I mean, all throughout, anyone who does Sahaj Bhat, all throughout Gurbani, this is reiterated over and over again. But the Buddhists are encouraged, their bhikshus are encouraged to keep these 5 remembrances that they say to themselves every day. So I thought this would be very helpful for us as well. Number 1, I am sure to become old. I cannot avoid aging. Every single human being on this planet ages. Even the celebrities that have access to the greatest treatments, have access to the most expensive serums and essences and whatever, they all get old. They all start to look old. I'm sure to become ill. I cannot avoid illness. This also happens to everybody. Everyone that you know has passed the 50 age mark, and probably before that, has some type of illness. Everybody is running to doctors, give me medication for this or for this. So you cannot avoid illness. No matter how healthy of a lifestyle you live, I'm not saying you shouldn't live a healthy lifestyle, but this is one of your realities. I am sure to die. I cannot avoid death. This, obviously, if there's one constant in life, it's this, that anybody who has taken birth on this planet has also died. And with only a few days, if you calculate the average lifespan of somebody in Canada, which is 80, and you do a quick calculation, 365 days of the year times 80 is only about 29,000 days. In 29,000 days from when you were born, you're also going to die. And that's if you make it to 80 years old. If you're younger, if you don't make it to the average age, and if you're older, you can realize that your time is significantly lower. Number 4, I must be separated and parted from all that is dear and beloved to me. I will grow different, separate from all that is dear and appealing. Not a single person will go with you in the end, and none of your money, none of your accomplishments will go with you in the end. You know, a rich person's dilemma is this. If you talk to any rich person on the deathbed, this is what they're probably going to say. Saints say this. They're so saddened by the fact that what they spent their entire life building is not going to be theirs in just a few moments. It is the most shocking and saddening thing for somebody. And that goes for anything that you accumulate in this life. None of it is going to matter in just a few days. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related through my actions. Whatever I do for good or evil, to that I will fall heir, which means that whatever you sow, you will reap. Do not think that what you are sowing right now is not going to bear consequence later on. Everything that you have right now is a consequence of what you did in the past, so therefore whatever you're doing right now is going to bear consequence in the future. Look, it's really direct in Gurbani. Dadda dos na deyu kise, dos karamma apanya, jo main kiya, so main paya, dos na dija avarjana. What I did, what I got, I cannot blame anybody else. That's what the Gurbani Bhagavati says. So these remembrances, if you want to screenshot this or just take a picture of it, these are fantastic to have to remember every day. What is Vivek? Alag alag karke janana, to know with discrimination. Don't worry about what's in the center. When Vaheguru seems more valuable than the world, know that your Vivek is starting to increase. To live with eyes open, to stop living blindly. I know a few of you guys know that I've been reading Brahm Vidya with Swami Ram Singh Ji for about 4 years now, and this is one of the very first granths we read, Vichar Sagar, and the definition of Vivek shows up there as well, At Vivek Lakshanam Doha. अविनाशी आत्म अचल जगतां तय प्रतिकूल ऐसो ज्ञान विवेक है सब साधन को मूल. So that's written in Hindi over there. Basically saying the same thing. When you can start to differentiate out the qualities of Brahm from the qualities of the world, know that you have Vivek. But we won't get into that. It is very technical at that point. What are the prerequisites in the Sampradaic tradition of learning? So, you guys are aware of how Taksal operates, or Sattva Vali Taksal, or the Nirmala Samprada, or the Udasin Samprada. Basically, all of the original Sampradas, they read Brahm Vidya, and in Brahm Vidya, they point out some of the steps to enlightenment, some of the prerequisites to enlightenment, and Vivek shows up as number 1. Vivek, followed by Vairag, followed by 6 types of wealth, followed by Mumukshata. These are the very basic things that are taught, like as ABC before you even learn Brahm Vidya. And right at the top there, number 1 is Vivek, which is very similar to the Buddhist philosophy, that sense of urgency and shock is the first emotion you bring to training. So I'm going to go through some activities to strengthen this Vivek Buddhi that you can apply in your life, that will help you hopefully get that sense of urgency. I'm just going to take a 5-second breather to drink some water. Are you guys enjoying so far? Because I have no idea what anyone is thinking or saying, because I can't see anyone's face or hear you guys.
That's very good. Yeah, very, very good.
Alrighty. Okay, so I saw a few of you guys playing video games before, and you won't believe it, but I absolutely love video games for one reason. They help understand the illusion philosophy of Maya so well. In fact, I was thinking in the future I would totally recommend a Gurudwara or an ashram or some dharamshala or anywhere that you read Brahm Vidya to invest in a virtual reality room. You know, the ones that have the chair that moves, and then you have the VR headset, you have the headphones on, and you're playing as like you actually have to move around and play, or you're in the chair and it moves you around, and there's even rain simulated by water, and then there's wind simulated by like air pockets around the VR room. Totally worth investing in that, and I'll tell you why. Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji, if you're really interested in Brahm Vidya and you're interested in more of the Atam Gyan that's pervading Guru Granth Sahib Ji, you really definitely need to read Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's Bani and Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Bani. Guru Nanak Dev Ji's Bani is a little bit more mangy in the sense that they use a lot of similes and metaphors that are difficult to understand if you haven't really grown up in the Punjab region. But Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's Bani is very intensely full of Vairag and Vivek, those two things, and Brahm Vidya. So I would really recommend for anyone who wants to sort of jump or like bolt their spiritual process, read Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's Bani. Not just Salok Mahalla Nama, but whichever rag their Bani shows up in, do a strict analysis and read it every day with love and with understanding. One of the things that Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji says, brilliantly stated, Drishtman hai sagal mithhina. Anything that is perceivable is an illusion. It's mithya. So mithya is a very technical word from the Brahm Vidya way of learning. Mithya actually has a specific definition. Mithya means, or the illusion means, what is perceivable but is not real. So mithya doesn't mean unreal, because unreal would mean, sorry, what did I say? Mithya, so there's 3 different things: Satya, Mithya, and Asatya. Mithya is the middle ground, which means perceivable, not actually real. What does that mean? When you're in that VR room, and you've got that, the eyesight, what is that called? the headset, right? That covers the eyes and the ears together, right? You got that on, and you've got maybe the chair that you're sitting on, and you've got the entire like environment that's been simulated. When you're playing that video game, or when you're in that reality, is it perceivable? Sorry, this typically works better when I have a live. But everything that you're seeing in that video game is fully perceivable. The entire world is absolutely real. It looks very real. It looks very interactive. You can touch different things, and they react. You can feel things through your five senses. So your eyes are working, your ears are working, your hands, the vibration input is coming in. All of that stuff is working, and your sense receptors are sensing any type of wind or air changes or water changes. Everything is perceivable. But is that world real? No. It's an illusion. It's an illusionary world. But ask somebody who's been playing on the VR set for like hours. That person stops playing. They're like, "Whoa! Didn't even realize I was sitting here for this long. It just felt so real." They're so immersed. But what I want you to think is, this entire world that you're seeing is like a video game. And you've been playing this game for so many lifetimes with all of your five senses, your eyes, your ears, your touch receptors, your taste receptors, your smell receptors, and the other mechanoreceptors in your joints. You've been playing this game for so long that now you think that this is what is real. But in reality, you have to take off the headset of the five senses. You have to take that off and realize your reality, your fundamental reality, is something completely else. So this is a lot of the times when Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji mentions, this is popular in Slok Mohalla Nama, you must have heard it. Jo supna arpekhna, aise jag ko jaan, inmen kach sacho nahi nanak bin bhagwan. This is supna arpekhna. Supna means dream state. Ekhna means drama. So back then they didn't have movies. But I bet you if they had movies back then, Maharaj would have made an allusion to a movie. Because Dekhna means like a drama, like a puppet show. Or like the previous version of movies, you can say. And they're saying that this entire world is like a dream, or like a movie, or like a video game. Nothing is real here. Nanak bin Bhagavan, except the ultimate reality, which is Satya, which is Chetan, which is Ananda Roop, or Vaheguru. So, then I have to ask you, if you close your eyes, do you have proof that you have a laptop in front of you or a phone in front of you? You have substantial proof that there is something in front of you, let's say your iPhone or your phone. If I close my eyes and I'm not touching the phone, do I have proof that it's there? No. I have to open my eyes, take in data that tells me that the phone is there, the photons hit the phone, and then they return to my eyes, and then my eyes take in that data. Or I have to touch it with my sense receptors, with my hands. Without the five senses, or some utility of the five senses, I don't have definitive proof that my phone is there. And that applies to anything else in this cosmos. Until you are receiving information of it through your five senses, you do not have any definitive proof that it's actually there. In your video game, when you turn, where you turned from, that no longer exists. It's only when you turn your headset into a different area that a new world is then created through data in the computer system, and then you get to see that world. It is very similar here. If your five senses are not receiving data about this world, you have no definitive proof that the world is actually there. These five senses that we rely on, and there are sub-senses as well, such as the senses for vibration and balance and things like that, but we'll just keep it to the five primary senses that we have. Are they that competent? with some VR sets, they have a higher, like the goggles, they're a little bit better than other goggles. They might have a higher frame rate, or they may not flicker as much. Similarly, our eyes are not that great. So if you guys have ever seen a motorcycle or any type of wheel on your car, you'll see when the car is starting up, the wheel looks like it's moving forward. But after a while, it starts to look like it's moving backwards. The car speeds up. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Was that clear? Like when you start up a car and you watch the wheel, at the beginning it looks like the wheel is moving correctly, but then after a while when the car speeds up, it looks like the wheel is moving backwards. So why does that happen? Because in very simple rates, the frame rate of our eyes is too slow to see the rotations of the wheel. So it starts to take in bits of information and the brain starts to compute that it must be moving backwards. So actually our five senses, our eyes have a blind spot as well. And if you look at any, basically your eyes will take out different things from your vision and become blind to it, because your brain doesn't have that much capacity to take in a full lot of information, so it just takes in pieces of information from your view. So like this is very common. You go to optical illusions on Google, you'll find all of this there. Even our five senses are not that competent. And we are using these five senses to analyze the entire cosmos. And we don't have any definitive proof that the cosmos exists without the five senses. A world like this is called a virtual world. A virtual world means a world that depends on data coming in order for it to be established. Without that data, the world essentially doesn't exist. So, one way to think about this is, every single human being that you're seeing, whether it's your parents, whether it's your friends, is a character in the video game of life. And how many of our gurus, how many times do they say that this world is a play? It's a game. Khel, khel, akhel, khelan, ant ko phir ek. There's so many references to the fact that this is all a game. So one way to think or to increase your vivek is, this entire game that you're seeing, every single person that you're seeing is just a character. And every single one of these characters is kind of useless. Because when you die and you have to reset the game, you end up going back into the game with a new set of characters. New mom, new dad, new friends, new everything. And you gotta start the entire thing over again. There is only one, call it character, would not justify it, but for the sake of the video game analogy, there is only one character in your game that can help you get out of the game. That character is the guru. There is only one player in this entire game that can help you get out. That is the guru. All other characters cannot do anything for you. So that's the virtual reality way of thinking about the world. Very useful. Anytime you're in a situation when you're having too much more towards somebody, or if you're having more towards someone, both those emotions are useless. Being angry at somebody or being overly attached. Because the character that you're doing this towards is essentially not real. In the Brahma Vidya tradition, all humans that you see with your five senses that you're collecting data of are called jivabhas, which means they're reflections, not actually real. In your life, majority of our experiences are like the mirage in the desert. From far, this oasis looks shiny. As soon as you touch it and come close to it, it disappears. school, your friends, your parents, your siblings, job, relationships, all of that. Very shiny at the beginning, and it looks like it can get rid of your thirst. The more you run after it, it rots and it perishes. I hate to say this because I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are probably not married, but ask anybody who has gotten married. Ask them what it felt like the first month, what it felt like after 6 months, and what it feels like after 1 year. First month mark, amazing, wonderful. I can't believe I have somebody who loves me so much and who helps me so much. I feel on top of the world. 6 month mark, I don't know. We're not doing so well. I don't know if this was all that was made out to be. 1 year mark, I'm just compromising. I can't get a divorce because the world will think I'm weird and stupid and it's bad. I'm just gonna live here because I have no other option. Relationships, very shiny at the beginning, but they end up turning into something completely else. Cars, mansions. Recently there was a house on sale very close to where I live. Very huge house. And we found out the reason they're selling it is because the owner went into like a serious depression and he just wanted to sell the house. Now, everybody thinking, you have such a big house, you've got some great cars, when you bought it, it felt very nice and wonderful. After a while, it's just walls standing up. Maybe they're painted with a nicer paint. Maybe they're a little bit farther apart, but they're just walls. And they feel empty. This happens with absolutely everything that you touch. So this entire game, everything in this world is like an M&M, I would say. Very shiny and nice on the outside, but as soon as you just hit it a little bit and crack it open, very dark on the inside, if you get my pun intended with the dark. So the illusion of Sikh. Let's talk to people that are so-called successful in the world. So this is a presentation I gear towards teenagers a lot. And here are people that they're very interested in. Kaur, she talks about fame and money definitely does not buy happiness. And she talks about going through a lot of depression, anxiety and self-hatred, even though I had absolutely everything. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian of all time, because he has no self-confidence, no self-love. And you go through his writing here, he says, I had depression, I pushed people away, the lowest place I've ever been, so forth and so forth. Brad Pitt, this dude is a very successful actor, says huge bouts of depression, irritation, isolation, heavy drug use, and he's not an actor that fell at any point. He was very popular basically all throughout his life, but still he's going through that. Oh, Time magazine did a piece on why Instagram is the worst social media for mental health. Now, social media, see, already the world that you're living in without social media is an illusion. But then when you go onto social media and you start creating another world for yourself, you start to read other people's stories and you start to see their world, you start to make another dream world within this dream world. It's a lot of inception going on here. And during the Guru's times, this was not an issue. Social media was not an issue because there wasn't this type of tech back then. So this isn't really addressed. And not even in Gurbani, it's not addressed in pretty much any religious text because it just never had come up. But the age, just in 50 years of technology, we don't even have the capability of seeing that our normal life is an illusion and a dream state, and we've created more dreams and more illusionary states beyond just this one that now we have to work on getting out of before we even come back to the very basic illusionary state. So, social media, not good. Spiritual journey. And it causes a lot of mental health deficits. People are depressed and sad when they go onto Instagram. Oh. In terms of your the people that you know, the characters in your life, I don't know if you guys should try this. Your moms might not like me after this. My mom definitely didn't like me after I did this. But I went to my mom and I asked, hey mom, do you remember who your children were from your past life? And she looks at me, she's like, no, that's a stupid question. Of course I don't remember them. So does that mean that in your next life you're not going to remember me? And she just stares at me. And she's like, Jasmine, never ask me that question again. And then I do this basically with, and I even told her, I'm like, Mom, that also means that I don't even remember my mother from my past life. How am I going to remember you in my next life? And these are the tips and techniques that I use my parents, because I quit school and I chose to, I don't know how to say it, but with Wahegu's grace, take this pathway seriously. And one of the ways I convinced my parents was I used to give them these little tidbits. Hey mom, you're not going to remember me in just a few days, just let me go. And the thing is, my parents, they're very liberal and they're very kind. It's the type of logic that you can't ignore, because everything I would present to them, they'd be like, she makes perfect sense, but I don't want to hear it. So try this if you want, but yeah, maybe not, because they might get mad at me. But yeah, do this with your friends, the friends that you know. Do you remember your friends from your last life? Do they remember their friends from their last life? Then how are they going to remember you in just a few days in your next life? Are these people actually yours? Do you keep resetting your game and playing with new characters and then getting attached to these new characters every time? And then every time you fail the game, reset the game, start again. And Maharaj says in their Banis, again, Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's Bani, Nejkar dekhyo jagat mein, ko kahu ko nahe, Nanak thir har bhagat hai, teh rakho man mahe. There's only one player, one character here that is actually here for you and can actually help you out of this useless, endless cycling of games, and that is your Guru, and that is Hari Di Bhakti. Har bin koi na chale se saath. Nothing goes along with you except that Brahm Siddhi. So this is another Vivek building activity that you can do. Dunbar's number. You may have heard about this, but the number of people we can keep track of and consider part of our life is about 150. 5 close friends, 15 close family, 50 of your clan, then 150. And then after that, the ties become so weak after 150 that they're not really considered much more than acquaintances. I want you to keep this in mind. When you think, if I choose to do what the Buddha did and completely turn my life around and go for a spiritual process more seriously, then what the heck am I giving up? Well, according to scientists, only 150 connections of people. And time, like I calculated for you guys, 29,000 days. And probably one city. Because if you don't really move around, people that are born in Brampton usually stay in Brampton, or at least you're going to probably stay in Canada. And if not, probably the continent of North America. So what are you giving up? 150 of your people, 150 people throughout your life, 29,000 days from the day that you were born, and one country, probably most likely one city. That's all you're giving up if you start to do this process seriously. That is nothing. In the time scales that the universe and the cosmos functions, that's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. Now, the time activity that I do with everybody, this is really cool and a huge Vivek builder. If you have your phones with you or the calculator on your computer, you can do this with me. So can I get an average age of the people that are listening right now? Let's include Kevin. 20 to 22. Okay, so we'll do 21. So we'll say that most of you guys are around 21. And we'll say that all of us will hopefully make it to Canada's average age, which is 80. Which means 80 minus 21. Let's just keep it 20 because that way you get an even number. Got 60 years left of life. And we're going to multiply that by 365. So you should get 21,900 days. Guys, if you put down $1 every single day of your life, starting today until 80 years, you still can't afford a decent car with all the nice features, including tax. That's how little time you have left. 21,900 days, but you guys are going to sleep. Sleeping, let's say you sleep more on weekends and less on weekdays, and you take naps in between. We'll say a third of your life. What's that? Times 0.6. You got about 14,454 days left. Okay, that's how much livable life you have, excluding sleep. But then you gotta go to school. You need a degree, and you need to get a job. You need to work. So how much of your day is taken up by work? Say 60%? You guys would good with that number? And then we got 40% of that left. Okay, so we're down to 5,780 days. But then you gotta shower. You gotta use the washroom. You gotta take care of yourself. You gotta eat food. You gotta make the food. Then you gotta wash the dishes. Then you gotta take care of the house. You gotta do some. What about family and your kids and your spouses? How much is that gonna take up? I would say that's another 50%. So we're down to 2,800 days. But we haven't even included any of the Facebook browsing, the YouTube browsing, the occasionally watching movie here and there. Maybe it's Netflix, maybe it's something. We haven't included any of that. And you really want to have some time to yourself. How much are we going to cut off of that? We're already down to under 3,000 days. Let's say, multiply that by 60. Overall, I'm not going to cut into it more. And by the way, if you're older than that, if your parents, 40, 60 years old, just imagine how little time they actually have left. Under 2,000 days of life where you can actually devote to a spiritual process. If you're going to do this as part of Grihasti, because in the Grihast ashram, you're going to have to take care of family, you're going to have to take care of work, you're going to have to take care of your house and your children, all that stuff. In the Grihast ashram, you have less than 2,000 days worth that you can actually do something serious for your spiritual process. It's no wonder the Guru keeps saying this takes a while. If you don't give me your full surrender, if you don't, this entire process is going to be, it's just so little time. It's a very difficult thing to get through in one lifetime. Is it possible? Yes. Those that have had Vivek, they have become enlightened. If you're going to live your life all dilly-dally, then it's probably not going to happen. Because from a logical standpoint, there just isn't enough time. Okay. 5 regrets of dying. Okay, so basically Mindful's interview with Ronnie. Some author did a survey of people that were dying and to know what their top 5 regrets were. The first one really made me sort of laugh and kind of. Which one? Number 5, actually. What is it? I wish I had let myself be happier. Are you serious? Everything that you did in your life was so that you could become happy. Now you're saying, I wish I'd let myself be happier. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. So when you're young, a lot of our life is lived based on what other people expect of me. No, I'm not even talking about your parents. I'm talking about what you see on social media. I'm talking about the way the world tells you that you have to live. Look at what people have said. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. And my final point is, a smart man learns from his mistakes. But a genius and a wise one learns from the mistake of others. 99.9% of the world is living the way that we talked about at the beginning. Where did it go? Here. You can learn from the way that they're living and make a choice. That would make you a genius. If you learn from your own mistakes, what you've done up until this time in life, think about it. When you were a child, you thought when you went to school, you'd be happy. Then you went to school and then you weren't happy. And then you thought, you know what, when middle school comes around, I'm going to be happier. No, you know what, high school comes around, then I'll be happy. No, you know what, once I get into the senior grades and I get good marks, then I'll be happy. No, you know what, when I get into the right college, then I'll be happy, or university. You know what, I'm already in university, when I get the degree, then I'll be happy. You got the degree, now you have a hard time finding a job. No, when I get a job, I'll be happy. Then you get a job. Now your job, you don't like your job, or it's not what you thought it would be. No. Once I get married, then I'll be happy. Then you get married, and then after a year, that doesn't turn out to be what you thought either. Once I have kids, then I'll be happy. And it goes on and on and on and on. So you can either learn from your mistakes, which would make you very smart, or you can learn from the mistakes that the 99 percentile is doing as well, and that would make you a genius. It's 5:30, it's an hour and a half, that's all I have for you guys today. Basically wanted to drive home a sense of shock that maybe despite considering ourselves religious or spiritual, that maybe we're quite not there yet. And for the people that are not quote-unquote Amritari, I'm not saying you have to go and take Amrit. What I really do want for you is to have the sense of shock. Because once you have the sense of shock, you yourself will seek out Guru Sahib. Because before that, it's just, oh, someone told me to take Amrit, or I just did it because everybody else around me was doing it, or it was monkey see, monkey do. Until you have this sense of shock and suppressiveness, you don't really know the worth of the Guru as well. You don't really know what they're actually offering you until you have that sense of shock. So, number one, do this ardas. Har Paryo Swami ka dwara dija buddha viveka. And if you don't know how to do the formal ardas, contemplate. 5 minutes, sit and say, I'd like to know that amongst this world that is an illusion, what is real? Amongst this world of the dead, I want to know what stays alive. This type of thinking. I want to know what the reality of the cosmos is. Call out and just say that within yourself. Contemplate the sakhyas, contemplate the 5 daily remembrances. You're going to get old, you're going to get ill, you're sure to die. Everybody that you love is going to get separated, and what you do is what you sow is what you're going to reap. Right? So that's basically it. And the final thing is, if not this, if not the search for eternal happiness and for Anand, then what? Please forgive me for the mistakes I made. There's a, what's this thing? Text for, is there a question on the text for voice? Okay, oh, gotcha. Believe you see what you should believe. Oh, gotcha. Okay. What can we do to get Gurdwara youth into spirituality, as most people listening to Islamic youth and as older folks? I think there's a huge divide between people that are doing katha at the Gurdwara and to the youth, especially in the diaspora. It's not even so much of a language barrier, actually. It's an intellectual and life-seeing barrier. Typically on the stage, people will say, Vaheguru jap, Vaheguru kar, Vaheguru ne tenu sab paase leke jana hai. But the youth are more interested in, I want happiness, I want Anand, I don't want to be in this little hellhole, tell me how to get out of it. It's just an issue of telling them that they have the option of eternal happiness. They have the option of getting out of their depression. They have the option of finding exuberant ecstasy. So I think that the people that are doing katha, and I'm not going to obviously talk about older people, but I'm talking to anybody who is interested in becoming a pracharak. Do not become a pracharak for the sake of becoming a pracharak. You need to go through a methodology of learning correctly what Vaheguru Sarup is, what Gurbani is actually saying, and you need to have a very strict sadhana. Sadhana means your morning, your spiritual practice. Because if you don't have that, you don't really have the authority to be preaching. And I find that a lot of times, especially in the Sikh Panth, there is so much misinformation out there, so much divisiveness on forums online. The forums I don't even go on forums anymore because it's just you're wrong, I'm right, this is wrong, da 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 da. But nothing there for actually honing into what spirituality is, or the inner world is not really looked into. Today's youth, they want something more substantial. They want something that's actually going to appeal to them. So if you're doing prajad and you're helping someone, go out and learn the proper methodology, the meaning of Gurbani, find a vidya, ustad, someone who can teach you, and then pass it on. Because if we do not, our spiritual core is very, very weak. Very weak. I'll tell you this. It doesn't make me happy at all. When I look at the Sikh Panth after Guru Gobind Singh Ji, it's only been, 300 years? And we have pretty much lost our core, our spiritual core. And it's become very much dharmic, which means that it's very much about rahat, it's just about what you look like. If you can read Bani, you have to understand, in Taksal, Santhya was ABC. It was the first thing they did. It was not the last and be all of everything. There was a huge amount of learning that happened afterwards, which is not there anymore. And the core, the spiritual lessons, I almost never hear anybody talk about Atma Gyan or what the Atma is anywhere. And that is what people are looking for. So Gurudwara people are not going, youth are not going to come to the Gurudwara if they don't find that thing, and they're looking elsewhere for that kind of stuff. When it's very sad because all of that spiritual core is so beautifully expressed in Gurbani. So I would say that those people of you that are older, go out and learn for yourself. Have a stricter sadhana routine so that you can start spreading the more essential and the spiritual aspects of Gurbani out there, because all of this stuff about Guru Tegh Bahadur Sahib Ji's Bani, illusions, the recipes for illusions, all of this stuff I never hear it talked about anywhere, and not in a way that the youth can relate to. And this is the stuff that they really want to know. Other than that, yeah, this has to be an overhaul. What is happening right now is good. There's lots of camps happening. Discord, I'm very happy with what you guys are doing. It seems a lot of people are tuning in and they like to, that this is a platform that's working for a lot of people. So this is great. Camps that happen, youth camps everywhere. They're inviting out more younger speakers. But the only thing I would say is make sure that the speakers that you call out, that they're actually learnt and they're not doing seva for seva's sake. I know everybody says that go out and do a talk, go out and do a workshop because you're doing the Guru Seva. The problem is, if you're saying the wrong things and you're not learnt, it's not Seva anymore. You are misinforming people. At that point, it kind of takes a different turn. But what you're doing on Discord is great. This is what people, the youth, like. It's going to have to get an overhaul. I think it's coming. I see a new generation of people that are learnt and they have stricter sadhana and they're doing prachar in a different way. So I'm not worried. I'm never worried because before me, the world was working perfectly fine. And after I leave, the world is working perfectly fine. I just have to do my part. Everybody has to do their part and no worry. The other thing is, don't be so divisive. Don't hate on people. You're wrong. Your panth is wrong. Your sampradaya is wrong. Your jathebandi is wrong. This is that. No, this is... You're not enlightened yet. So that's all you need to focus on. Your personal enlightenment. Once you get enlightened, you can have the authority to talk about others. But right now, you don't even know what's fully right because it hasn't happened to you yet. The other question I see is, do we need to believe before we need to see, or do we need to see before we need to believe? Two ways to go about this. Typically, you need to see before you believe, and you're going to be like, what, Jasmine? It's true. Actually, the way the spiritual process works, when Vivek comes into your life, and you have that sense of shock and dismay of the meaningless of life. So the meaningless of life is pretty apparent. There's no proof that you need. Everything I've talked about today is proof enough that this life is pretty, it's not really solid. It is full of all these worries and things like that. So that is apparent. Once you have that sense of shock and urgency and you go into some kind of spiritual practice, your guru, or the enlightened being who is responsible for transferring enlightenment to you, will give you a glimpse of enlightenment. In different sampradayas, it's called different things. Basically, you can say they give you a taste of samadhi. It comes in after you do some sadhana. Once that taste of samadhi comes into your life, that is the first sight you have, and then you start your spiritual process with more vigor. Before that, so that is essentially the seeing to believe. And that happens to anybody who's on the enlightenment pathway. But even to get to that, all I'm saying is you don't have to believe or see. If you're coming from a perspective of a non-religious background, what you do need to see is the meaningless of life, because that's not hidden. It's very apparent. Seek that sense of shock and urgency within yourself and to do something about it. Then when you seek the Guru and you undergo some spiritual process from them, you will see, the Guru will show you, and then you will believe. There's actually a Gurbani Pankti that talks exactly about this, where I need to see before I believe, but I can't find it right now, and it's off the top of my tongue. The other problem is, why don't we believe before we see? The thing is, sometimes when you believe what people have just been telling you, Guru Granth Sahib Ji is written from the perspective of enlightened beings. So everybody in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, all of their Bani, whoever's written it, is already enlightened, so they've written it. But all of the Kathavachaks that are talking about it, other than accomplished saints, are not enlightened. So what you're seeing or what you're getting in forms of Facebook or WhatsApp messages or Kathas online, you're getting a very subpar experience of Gurbani, which means that what they're telling you to believe may not be 100% accurate. I know a lot of people think that there's, we have to, there's no, I just heard about this just a few weeks ago, that there's a group of people that says Jivan Mukti is impossible, that you have to pray, then you're going to go to Sachkhand, there's like this world after you go, and then, Guru Gobind Singh Ji is going to be standing there with a Barcha at the front, and then they're going to let you in, and then you're going to meditate a lot, and then you're going to meet Vaheguru. And that's completely wrong, because nowhere in Gurbani does it say that. In fact, it says Sachkhand Vasai Nirankar, which means a shapeless, formless dimension is Sachkhand. Anyways, we're not going to get into that. So what happens is, what people are telling you to believe may not be exactly what the Guru Sahibs are telling you to believe. However, what I would encourage is listen to Kirtan. Definitely listen to Kirtan. If you do Kirtan, that's great as well. When you start to do Kirtan and when you start to repeat a Bani and it starts to completely go in you, something gets triggered. And you start to have a relationship with the Guru. Listen to their Sakhya. From people, the Guru Sakhya, especially from people that are well learnt, the Guru Sakhya and Kirtan are going to be their greatest helps, because they're going to help you form a relationship with the Guru, and then when the Guru enters your life, a lot of the work is going to start getting done. So that much belief and faith you have to have. But I totally understand about the believing and seeing thing. So all I'm saying is, get that sense of urgency and shock. Contemplate your life, because you don't need proof for that. That's pretty apparent. And form a relationship with your Guru through Kirtan and through their Sakhya. Katha, I'm very wary about saying, because there's so much Katha out there and it's misinformed. So I can't give you a full stamp on where to listen to Katha from. But that's my answer there. Is that good? Okay. Oh no, thank you so much. I'm so happy that there is a community like this out there for the Sikhs to access. Yeah, thank you. Please forgive me for any mistakes I made. If I offended anyone, please forgive me. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru